Welcome back learners to the course on Essentials of Financial Management, week 3, lecture number 15, concept of arbitrage in capital structure. If you can recall, in lecture 14 we discussed about the concept of Modi-Gilani and Miller approach of capital structure. In this entire week, that is week 3, we have been discussing about the various capital structure theories, starting with the net income approach, followed by the net operating income approach. Then we discussed about the traditional or the intermediate approach. In the previous class we discussed about the Modi-Gilani and Miller approach. Now we can discuss the concept of arbitrage in capital structure, right. It is a very important concept, part of the Modi-Gilani and Miller theory. So, we will discuss about the concept of arbitrage and the pecking order theory also in this particular lecture. What is arbitrage? Before discussing about the concept of arbitrage with respect to capital structure or with respect to the theory, first we should understand what is arbitrage actually. So, let us understand it. What is arbitrage? It is buying low and selling high. So, when you buy something at a very low price and sell it at a higher price, that is what the arbitrage is. So, buying low and selling it high, but it is not only buying low and selling high, these transactions should be simultaneous or with a very minimum time gap in between. So, it involves simultaneous buying and selling the same asset in different markets to capitalize on price discrepancies. So, you purchase a share in some market, let us say it is available at rupees 100, and you find out that that share is being selling at rupees 105 in some other market, and simultaneously sell that share at rupees 105 in some other market. So, there can be temporary price discrepancies between the markets, right, because of the difference in supply and demand in two different markets, or there could be different laws, momentary, you can say the issues with the adjustments of the exchange rates. There might be multiple reasons, and because of that there might be momentary discrepancies, and the arbitrageurs can take benefit of these momentary price discrepancies on different markets. This concept is known as arbitrage. It is considered as a risk free or a riskless profit, because you are not getting exposed to the exposure as far as the investment is concerned, right. What are the key aspects of arbitrage? Identifying price discrepancies. So, it starts with identification of price discrepancies, that is, you identify a particular asset or security which is being sold at a different price in some market and which is available at a different price in some other market. So, you look for the markets from where you can get it at a cheaper rate, and you look for the markets where you can sell it off at a higher price, right. This is the concept of arbitrage, and it starts with the identifying price discrepancies. So, what it is? Market inefficiencies, that is imperfect markets. So, markets are actually not perfect in reality, right. So, there can be imperfect markets, there can be market inefficiencies, and there can be price variations because of that in different markets. Different exchanges, different regulations, sentiments, as we already discussed, different exchanges, let us say exchange in USA or exchange in India, they might have different laws, they might have different supply and demand of particular securities, right, different investor sentiments, and because of that there might be slight price variations temporary. This is what arbitrage is. Exchange rate fluctuations, that is temporary price differences because of the exchange rate fluctuations might also be there. Simultaneous transactions. So, this is a very important point as far as the concept of arbitrage is concerned. The transactions should be simultaneous. It is not like you purchase a security in some market and you held it for, let us say, some days, and then you are selling it off. So, in that case it will not be considered as arbitrage, rather it will be considered as a speculation and will be considered as a speculator. What? Because what speculators do, they purchase a security when the prices are low, they hold on for some time, wait for the prices to increase, look for the opportunity, and then sell it off after some time. So, this is what the speculators do, but arbitrageurs are not speculators. Arbitrageurs purchase a security at a low price and simultaneously sell it at a higher price in some other market. So, they are making riskless profit, whereas speculators are taking a lot of risk in anticipation of more returns. So, there is a difference. For arbitrage to take place, there should be simultaneous transactions, or there should be very minimum gap of maybe few minutes to few hours between the transactions, right. Market efficiency. So, actually what happens is arbitrage facilitates market efficiency. Arbitrage starts with spotting inefficient markets, but it facilitates market efficiency. How it facilitates? Because arbitrageurs exploit price discrepancies, they find out the markets where the asset or the security is available at a lower price. They also spot the market where the assets can be sold at a higher price. So, they exploit price discrepancies because they increase demand in the cheaper market. So, wherever the asset or the security is available at a cheaper rate, they try to purchase more from there. So, they increase demand there and they increase supply in the expensive market. So, wherever that security is selling at a higher rate, they increase the supply there. So, if you know the law of demand and supply, if demand increases, right, in the cheaper market, if the demand increases, obviously the prices will go high. And if the supply in the expensive market increase, if the supply increases, the prices will fall down. So, in the cheaper market, the prices will go up. In the expensive market, the prices will go down. Ultimately, both the prices in the different markets will come to a same level with the help of the arbitrageurs exploiting the market. So, in a way we can say they facilitate market efficiency, they try to make inefficient market efficient. Okay. The next is risk free profit in theory. So, this is the core of arbitrage. So, arbitrageurs try to make risk free profit or risk less profit because they are not getting exposed to the exposure, right. Transaction cost. So, the risk associated, there are certain risks associated with arbitrage also. One of them is transaction cost, because when you purchase something, when you sell something, so there are some cost associated to that, right. There might be brokerage fee. So, these costs you have to bear and it can eat the profits that you are making as far as the price differences are concerned. Another risk is execution risk, because there is a very short time and both the markets, the securities might adjust themselves very quickly. So, the arbitrageurs do not have much time to sell once they purchase a security. So, they might not be able to execute the risk, right. The price differences that they have identified, actually they might not be able to sell off the securities in the cheaper market within that particular time. So, that risk is always there. And the third risk is related to the model, because they use certain models to predict and identify the markets where the price differences might be there, right. But the model might be flawed. So, it is not always the case that you identify the markets perfectly and can execute your arbitrage, right. So, the model might be flawed. Now, what are the examples of arbitrage? Let us look at few of the examples. The first one is currency arbitrage, right. Any currency which is available at a lower rate in some market and you can get it from that market and you can sell that currency where it is being sold at a high market. Let us say the exchange rate between dollar and euro, let us say 1 euro equals to $1.11, right, in the stock in US, right. And so, and it is being sold at 1.13, the exchange rate between US, the euro and dollar is 1.13 in UK. So, investors can purchase the euro from US, they have to spend only dollars and they can sell that euro in UK where they will get $1.13 for that. So, this is, but this is a very momentary transaction, and if they can encash it, this is how the currency arbitrage works. Then similarly, the stock arbitrage, that means you are talking about the shares. Let us say take an example, let us say SDFC stocks are also listed in US also stock markets. So, let us say it is available at 1700 in US stock market, and in India at the same point of time you can sell it off at 1750 rupees, 1750. So, what investors can do, they can get it at 1700 from US market and simultaneously they can sell it in the Indian stock market at 1750. So, they can book a risk free profit of rupees 50, but again this discrepancy will be there for a very small point of time. You have to strike a deal in that particular time and always it might not be available. So, this is the case of stock arbitrage. Similarly, you can have a case of commodity arbitrage. Let us take an example of gold. let's say the gold 10 grams gold in Japan is available at let's say 87,000 rupees, and you can just get it from there, and simultaneously you can sell it at let's say 88,000 for 10 grams of gold in India. So, you can book a profit of 1,000 for 10 grams of gold by taking the advantage of these price differentials. So, this is example of commodity arbitrage, right. I think now it is clear what arbitrage is and how it works, and the different examples that we have taken in terms of the currency arbitrage, stock arbitrage and commodity arbitrage. So, let us move further. Okay. So, if you remember, we took up this question in the previous class when we were discussing about the theory of capital structure, and now we have to discuss about the concept of arbitrage. So, just recall this question. There were two firms X and Y. Firm X was not using any debt in its capital structure, and firm Y was using debt in its capital structure, right. And it was given that these two are exactly identical firms except their capital structure was different. And when we calculated the values, we saw that value of an unlevered firm which was not using debt in its capital structure was found to be 1,25,000, and value of a levered firm which was using debt in its capital structure was found to be higher, it was 1,75,000. But given the condition that these two were identical firms except their capital structure, their values should not be different as per the theory, justifying the concept of arbitrage, right. So, now we will see how does this actually works as per the theory. Again, this is a theoretical concept. So, let us see, if we look at the previous illustration, the market value of the firm Y which uses debt content in its capital structure is higher than the market value of firm X which does not use debt content in its capital structure. If you look back, Y has debt and its value is 1,75,000, whereas X does not use debt and its value is 1,25,000. This is what it says. According to theory, this situation cannot remain for a long period of time because of the arbitrage process. So, they say that this discrepancy or difference in values will not remain for a longer time because of the arbitrage process. So, what it is? As the investors in company Y, Y means which has debt in its capital structure, can earn a higher rate of return on their investment with lower financial risk. Why lower financial risk? Because firm X is not using debt. Lower financial risk, they will sell their holding of shares in company Y and invest the same in company X. So, investors from company Y will start selling their shares and they will invest the same in company X because they can earn higher rate of return, and because the risk is also less as far as the company X is concerned, it has not much debt in its capital structure, right. Further, as company X does not use any debt in its capital structure, the financial risk to investors will be less. So, we already discussed company X does not employ any debt in its capital structure. So, financial risk to the investors is also less. We already know the company which uses more debt in its capital structure has higher financial risk, right, and company X is not using any debt. So, the financial risk is also less. Thus, they will engage in personal leverage. Now, please pay attention to this. This is a very important concept and very important line. They will engage in personal leverage by borrowing additional funds, that is borrowing additional funds equivalent to their proportionate share in firm's Y's debt. So, again try to understand this line, because why they need to engage in personal leverage? Because there is no corporate leverage. The company X is not using any debt. So, financial leverage advantage company X is not getting. So, investors will try to get this advantage at their end. So, they will start getting involved in personal leverage, right. So, they will engage in personal leverage by borrowing additional funds which is equivalent to their proportionate share in firm's Y debt. So, whatever their proportionate share is in firm's Y's debt, so they will raise that much of debt personally at the same rate of interest, and even the rate of interest will also be same, which is the rate of interest for firm Y, and invest the borrowed funds also in company X. So, whatever they have raised through personal loan, they will invest that money also in company X. This is how the arbitrage works. So, the arbitrage process will continue till the prices of shares of company Y fall and that of the company X rise, so as to make the market value of the two firms identical. So, this process, the arbitrage process, will keep on going till the time the shares of company Y fall, which uses debt, the shares of company Y's fall, and the company X, which does not use debt in its capital structure, the share prices of company X rise. So, till the time the prices of both the firms becomes identical, this process will continue, right. The market value of the two firms will become identical after a point of time. However, in arbitrage process, such investors who switch their holdings will gain. Only those investors who switch their holdings during the arbitrage process will gain as per the theory of capital structure. Again, this is a theoretical concept given by approach, Modigliani and Miller. Okay. So, now we will see one example to see how actually this arbitrage process works, right. So, the following is a data regarding two companies, company A and company B, belonging to the same equivalent risk class. Okay. So, you see this, we have company A and company B. Number of equity shares for company A is 1 lakh. Company A employs debt or company A uses debt, how much? 50,000, and the rate of interest on debt is 8%, this is given. Company B does not use any debt in its capital structure, right. Market price per share as far as the company A is there, it is rupees 1.30, and for company B it is rupee 1. Profit before interest for both the companies is rupees 20,000. So, both the companies has the same profit before interest, that is 20,000, company A and company B. So, all profits after debenture interest are distributed as dividends. You are required to explain how, under Modigliani and Miller approach, an investor holding 10% of shares in company A will be better off in switching his holding to company B, right. So, it is given that investor holds 10% of shares of company A, investor has 10% shares of company A, right. Now, we have to explain, will he be better off in switching his holding to company B, that is, if he sells off his holding in company A and switches to company B, will he be in a better position, or if he would have stick to company A, will he be in a better position? That is the comparison that we have to make here, right. So, in the opinion of Modigliani and Miller, two identical firms, here is the keyword, identical firms in all aspects except their capital structure. So, here also you see one they are identical firms and they are different as far as the capital structure is concerned. One is using debt, the other one is not using debt. Except their capital structure cannot have different market values because of the arbitrage process. In case two identical firms except for their capital structure have different market values, arbitrage will take place and investors will engage in personal leverage as against the corporate leverage. The arbitrage would work as follows. So, investors will engage in personal leverage, that is they will be purchasing shares of those companies from where they can get high returns at a lower risk, right. How it works? There are few steps. The step 1 says that the investor will sell in the market 10% of shares in company A. So, it is already given in the question that the investor has 10% holdings of company A. So, he will sell his holdings, that is 10%, in the market. So, he has 10% holdings, and what is the total number of shares? It is 1 lakh given. So, 10% of 1 lakh is 10,000, and you multiply this by 1.30. Why 1.30? Because the market price per share is given as 1.30. So, this comes out to be 13,000. 1 lakh into 10% is 10,000 and 10,000 into 1.30 is 13,000. So, he can sell his 10% shares that he is having in company A and get 13,000, right. What is step 2? This is the most important step. He will raise a loan of 5,000. Now, how you get this 5,000? we are multiplying 50,000 by 10%. So, how you got this 50,000 into 10%? This 5,000 actually is, it is equivalent to his proportionate share in company's A's debt. If you see how much company's A debt amount is 50,000 and how much holding he has, his proportionate share is 10%. So, we got this 50,000 into 10% as 5,000. So, he needs to raise a loan of 5,000 at his own end because the company B is not using any debt. So, he will get involved in personal leverage as against the corporate leverage, right. So, and what will the rate of interest? At the same rate of interest, and that is rate of interest is 8%, similar to the company A, and invest the borrowed funds also in company B to take advantage of personal leverage as against the corporate leverage, because the company B does not use any debt in its capital structure. So, in the first step he sold off his holdings and got 13,000. Here he has taken a loan of 5,000, right. We already got how we got this 5,000. So, he will also invest the same in the company's B shares. So, step 3, he will buy 18,000 shares in company B with a total amount realized from step 1 and step 2. From step 1 he realized 13,000, from step 2 he realized 5,000. So, 13,000 from 5,000 is 18,000, and therefore, now he has 12% shares in company's B. If you see, company B has how much? 12% shares in company's B, right. So, 18,000 of 1,50,000. So, this comes out to be 12%, right. Now, talk about the present income of investor in company A. Company's profit before payment of interest is 20,000 less interest on debentures. Here the interest that the company is paying on debentures of 50,000 is at the rate of 8%. So, 50,000 into 8% is 4,000, right. The company is paying an interest of 4,000. Profit after interest. So, 20,000 minus 4,000 is 16,000. So, share of the investor is 10% of 16,000 is 1,600. He has 10% stake. So, he has a share of 1,600 if he continues to be with company A, right. Income of the investor after switching holding to company B. Company's profit before payment of interest is 20,000. This is similar for both the companies. Less interest. So, company B is not using any debt in its capital structure, that is nil. Profit after interest. So, it is the same 20,000. Share of investor. He has 12% shares of company B. So, it is 12% of 20,000 is 2,400, right, and less interest paid on a loan taken at the rate of 8%. So, he has raised a personal loan at the rate of 8%. So, he also needs to pay interest on that. So, 5,000 at the rate of 8% is 400. So, net income of the investor is 2,400 minus 400 the interest that he is paying on personal loan comes out to be 2,000. So, as the net income of the investor in company B is higher than the loss of income from company A due to switching the holdings, the investor will gain in switching his holdings to company B. So, if you see, if he would have stick to company A, he switched to company B, he is getting 2,000. So, you can say that the net income of the investor in company B is higher than the loss of income from company A. The loss of income is 1,600 if he switches to company B, right. But he is getting 2,000, the loss of income is 1,600, but because of switching he is getting 2,000. So, in all he is in a profit of 400 if he switches to company B. This is what the concept of arbitrage as discussed by theory is, right. I think now you are clear with the concept of arbitrage. This is theoretical concept explained by the theory. Okay. Now, the next is pecking order theory. The pecking order theory was first suggested by Donaldson in 1961. So, according to this theory, a firm has well defined order of preference for raising finance. Whenever a firm needs funds, it will rely as much as possible on internally generated funds. If the internally generated funds are not sufficient to meet the financial requirements, it will move to debt in the form of term loans and then to non-convertible bonds and debentures and then to convertible debt instruments and then to quasi equity instruments, that is preference shares, and after exhausting all sources it may finally move to raise finance through issue of new equity share capital. Issue of new equity share for raising funds is considered as the last resort. So, as per this theory, the firm has a predefined preference as far as the raising of funds are concerned. The first priority for any company is the use of internal sources of funds if it has. If internal sources are not sufficient enough and the investments are still there and the company needs additional funding, so what company does is it will move towards the debt in the form of term loans from bank. If that is also not sufficient, they can move to the non-convertible bonds and debentures. If that is not sufficient, then they will further move to the convertible bonds and debentures, that is which can be converted to equity at a later point of time. And if that is again not sufficient, they can move to the quasi equity in the form of preference shares, which are the hybrid securities which have certain features resembling equity, certain features resembling debt. And if all these sources are not sufficient, still the firm requires more funding, the last resort for a company, the last preference for a company is to issue new equity share. Now, there are certain assumptions. Pecking order theory is based on the following assumptions. So, what are those assumptions? The cost of using internally generated funds is lowest because of the no issue cost. So, whenever you have retained earnings, you do not need to issue any new security, it is the lowest, right. The issue cost for the retained earnings or internal sources of funds is the lowest. Raising of debt is cheaper as compared to issuing new equity capital. So, raising of debt is cheaper as compared to equity. Again, raising of debt through term loans is relatively cheaper than issuing bonds and debentures. Raising money using term loans from banks or financial institutions is still cheaper than issuing debentures and bonds. And finally, issue of new equity capital involves heavy issue cost, right. Now, the second in line of the pecking order theory is the modified pecking order theory, which was suggested by Myers and Majaluf in 1984. It is again very similar to the previous theory which was given by Donaldson with little bit variation. So, according to the modified pecking order theory, the order of preference for raising finance arises because of the existence of asymmetric information between the market and the firm. The theory argues that because of asymmetric information, the market may undervalue the project and the firm may prefer internal funds than raising debt as compared to the issue of new equity share, right. So, it says that because of the asymmetric information between the firm and the external investors might undervalue a project. So, in that case they will not be willing to pay higher for the equity raised by the company. So, the theory argues that because of asymmetric information, the market may undervalue the project. So, what is the preference as far as the capital is concerned for pecking order theory as per the Myers and Majaluf in 1984? The first one is retained earnings. Companies prefer retained earnings because they are the cheapest and the easiest form of financing. Managers do not have to reveal sensitive information to outside investors, right. That is the first thing. Company do not need to disclose the sensitive information to the external investors when it comes to the retained earnings, and it is also cheaper. Debt, if external financing is needed, companies prefer debt over equity because issue cost is less in debt as compared to equity. And finally, equity, issuing new equity is considered the last preferred option or the last resort. After exploring all other options, the company will go for the equity because it needs to disclose a lot of information to the outside investors as well. Okay. So, continuing with the modified pecking order theory, information asymmetry and signaling. The preference for internal financing and debt over equity is driven by information asymmetry. Information asymmetry means when both parties or different parties do not have the similar amount of information. One party might be having more access to information as compared to other party. That is the case of information asymmetry. Opposite to information symmetry, when everyone has equal access to the information. Managers are reluctant to issue equity when they believe the stock is undervalued by the market. It is like selling ownership at a bargain price. When managers believe that the stock is undervalued, they are reluctant or they are not willing to issue the share at that point of time, because it is like issuing it at a lower price or at a discount. It is like selling it at a bargain price, right. If managers believe the stock is overvalued, they might be tempted to issue equity to take advantage of the inflated price. Investors may perceive this as a negative signal sometimes. If managers believe that the stock prices are overvalued, at that point of time they might be more willing, they might be more tempted to issue the shares because they are highly priced at that point of time, right. But investors may perceive this as a negative signal sometimes, and if they perceive this as a negative signal, the market price of shares might go down also. Examples of this pecking order theory: mature profitable companies, they heavily rely on retained earnings because they already have a lot of retained earnings. So, in case they need large investments for any projects, they might resort to debt, but equity might be the last option. Rapidly growing companies, they burn out their retained earnings very quickly because they have a lot of growth opportunities, and they also use debt and equity in that preference. Startups, they do not have much access to the debt, because and they also do not have much of retained earnings because it is a startup. So, they may use equity financing from venture capitalists, right. What are the implications of pecking order theory? No target capital structure. All the theories that we have been discussing talks about the proportion of debt and equity. Here it emphasizes that there is no target capital structure, and this actually depends on the proportion of the internal funds that the company has and the external requirements for investments that it has to get from the other funding sources. Debt levels as residual, it talks about that debt will be the levels of debt will depend upon the quantum of retained earnings the company has. After using the retained earnings, they will go for the debt. So, debt levels are residual. And finally, financial flexibility, these companies are less reliant on external financing because they are more dependent on retained earnings. So, they try to use more of retained earnings and less reliant on external financing, whether it is equity, whether it is debt, right. So, these are the books which you can go through to have a better understanding of the concepts that we have discussed. Thank you so much.